Hello and welcome to Varn Blog, and we continue our discussion on the elements of Michael Sandel's What Money Can't Buy, the moral limits of markets. I say this with some reservation. I've worked in both the institutions mentioned today in some capacity, both jails and schools. And this is somewhat of a liberal bugaboo, and many things described here have changed, but in many ways gotten worse. Illinois is, one of the largest states with the most effective education, yet 55 schools in the Chicago area had no student who could pass reading and writing proficiency tests. So we say this at a time where things seem to be in maximal breakdown. Now, I say that Seams does a lot of work in that statement, but it's something to note. I'll put a link in the show notes about what I mentioned there, and I'll probably do a show about that relatively soon. Jails and schools, from what money can't buy, naming rights. Advertising has also invaded two institutions most central to civil authority and public purpose, jails and schools. In 2011, the Erie County Holding Center in Buffalo, New York, began running ads on high-definition television screens that defendants see moments after their arrest. What advertisers would want to reach this audience? Bail bondsmen and defense lawyers. The commercials sell for $40 per week with a one-year commitment. They run along with information from the holding center about rules and visiting hours. The ads also appear on screens in a lobby used by family and friends waiting to visit these inmates. The county government receives a third of the advertising revenue, which will boost the county coffers by $8,000 to $15,000 a year. The ads sold out quickly. Anthony Indina, the head of the ad company that set up the arrangement, explains its appeal. What do people want when they are in the holding center? They want to get out, and they don't want to get convicted. So they want bail and an attorney. The ads in the audience were a perfect fit. Quote, you want to advertise to someone exactly when they want to make their decision, Deanna told the Buffalo News. That is the case here. This is the ultimate captive audience. Channel Run streams advertising messages to audiences of a different kind. Millions of teenagers required to watch it in classrooms around the country. When I started teaching and when I was in school, we watched Channel 1. This as a side note. And I am over 40 years old. So this has been going on for a long time. The commercial-sponsored 12-minute television news program was launched in 1989 by Chris Whittle, an entrepreneur, where it offered schools free television sets, video equipment, and a satellite link in exchange for an agreement to show a program every day and to require students to watch it, including the 2 minutes of commercials it contained. Although New York State banned Channel 1 from its schools, most states did not, and by 2000, Channel 1 was seen by 8 million students in 12,000 schools. Since it reached more than 40% of the nation's teenagers, it was able to charge the advertisers such as Pepsi, Snickers, Claracell, Gatorade, Reebok, Taco Bell, and the U.S. Army premium rates, about $200,000 per 30-second spot, comparable to ad rates on network television. A Channel 1 executive explained its financial success at Youth Marketing Conference in 1994. The biggest selling point to advertisers is that we are forcing kids to watch 2 minutes of commercials. The advertisers get a group of kids who cannot go to the bathroom, cannot change the station, cannot listen to their mom yell in the background, and who cannot be playing Nintendo, who cannot have their headsets on. Riddle told Channel 1 some years ago and is now starting a for-profit school in New York. His former company is no longer the potent force it once was. Since its peak in the early 2000s, Channel 1 has lost about a third of the schools and many major advertisers, but it succeeded in shattering the taboo against commercials in the classroom. Today, public schools are awash in advertising, corporate partnerships, product placements, and even naming rights. The presence of commercialism in classrooms is not altogether new. In the 1920s, Ivory Soap donated a bar of ivory to schools for soap carving competitions. The placing of company logos and scoreboards and ads in high school yearbooks has long been a common practice, but in the 1990s brought a dramatic increase in corporate involvement in schools. Companies flooded teachers with free videos, posters, and learning kits designed to varnish corporate images and emblazon brand names in the minds of children. They called them sponsored educational materials. Students could learn about nutrition from curriculum materials supplied by Hershey's Chocolate or McDonald's, or the effects of Alaska oil spill in a video made by Exxon. Procter & Gamble offered environmental curriculums to explain why disposable diapers were good for the earth. In 2009, Scholastic, the world's largest publisher of children's books, distributed free curriculum materials about the energy industry to 6,000 fourth grade teachers. The curriculum, called the United States of Energy, was funded by the American Coal Foundation. The industry sponsor lesson plan highlighted include the benefits of coal, but made no mention of mining accidents, toxic rays, greenhouse gases, or other environmental effects. And when press accounts reported the widespread criticism of the one-sided curriculum, Scholastic announced it would scale back its corporate-sponsored publication. Not all corporate scholarship freebies promote ideological agendas. Some just plug the brand and is well known. For example, the Campbell Soup Company set out a free science kit that purported to teach a scientific method, which use of slotted spoons, including the kit. The students were shown how to prove Campbell's Prego spaghetti sauce was thicker than Ragu, the rival brand. General Mills sent teachers a science curriculum with volcanoes called Gushers, the Wonders of the Earth. The kit included free samples of the Fruit Gushers candy whose soft centers gush when bitten. Teacher's guide suggested that the students bite into the Gushers and compare the effect to a geothermal eruption. A Tootsie Roll kit showed third graders how to practice by counting Tootsie Rolls, and for writing assignments, it recommended children interview family members about their fond memories of Tootsie Rolls. I'm going to skip. There's a lot of examples. The rapid commercialization of schools is corrupting in two ways. First, most corporate-sponsored curriculum media is written with bias, distortion, and superficial fare. A study of the Consumers Union found, not surprisingly, that nearly 80% of sponsored educational materials were slanted towards the sponsor's product or point of view. But even if the corporate sponsor supplied objective teaching tools of impeccable quality, commercial advertising would still be pernicious presence in the classroom because it is at odds with the purpose of school. Advertising encourages people to want things and satisfy their desires. Education encourages people to reflect critically on their desires and restrain or to elevate them. The purpose of advertising is to recruit consumers. The purpose of public schools is to cultivate citizens. I'm going to pause there. I love when Sandel says that, as if that is uncontested or universally true. Remember what I talked about on Lash. A lot of the purpose of cultivating citizens was about cultivating leadership for the military in the 1950s or leadership for industry. And that was even true for progressive reformers like John Dewey, who we often associate with the left because he was associated with the left and with the New School. But still, that was the purpose of a lot of the curricula. It isn't easy to teach students to be citizens capable of thinking critical about the world around them when so much of childhood consists of basic training for consumer society. At the time when many children come to school as walking billboard logos and labels and licensed apparel, it becomes all the more difficult and all the more important for schools to create some distance between popular culture steeped in the ethos of consumerism. But advertising, of course, is different. It blurs the boundaries between places and makes everything a site for selling. Quote, discover your river revenue at the schoolhouse gate. Proclaimed a brochure promoting a marketing conference for school advertisers. Quote, whether it's first graders learning to read or teenagers shopping for their first car, we guarantee an introduction of your product and your company to the students in the traditional setting of the classroom. As the marketers storm the schoolhouse gates, cash-strapped schools reeling from the recession, property tax caps, budget cuts, and rising enrollment, will no choice but to let them in. But the fault lies less in our schools than in us as citizens. Rather than raise the public funds we need to educate our children, we choose instead to sell their time and rent their minds to Burger King and Mountain Dew. Commercialism does not destroy everything it touches. A fire hydrant with a KFC logo still delivers waters to douse the flames. A subway car shrink wrapped in ads for a Hollywood movie can still get you home in time for dinner. Children can learn arithmetic by counting Tootsie Rolls. Sports stands still root for the home team in the Bank of America Stadium, the AT&T Park, and the Lincoln Financial Field, even if few of us can name the teams that call those places home. Nevertheless, imprinting things with corporate logos changes their meaning. Markets leave their mark. Product placement spoils the integrity of books and corrupts the relationship with the author and reader. Tattooed body ads objectify and demean people paid to wear them. Commercials in classrooms undermine the educational purpose of schools. These, I admit, are contestable judgments. People disagree about the meaning of books, bodies, and schools and how they should be valued. In fact, we disagree about the norms appropriate to many of the domains that the markets have invaded: family life, friendship, sex, procreation, health, education, nature, art, citizenship, sports, and the way we contend with the prospect of death. But that's my point. Once we see that the markets and commerce change the character of the goods they touch, we have to ask ourselves where markets belong and where they don't. And we can't answer this question without deliberating about the meaning and purpose of goods and the values that govern them. Such deliberations touch unavoidably on competing conceptions of the good life. This terrain is on which we sometimes fear to tread. For fear of disagreement, we hesitate to bring our moral and spiritual convictions into the public sphere, but by shrinking from these questions does not leave them undecided. It simply means the market will decide them for us. I'm always fascinated by Sandel's points here. His points that a positive civic unity requires an understanding of what a good life can be and what the purposes of that life are for. And that this will always be contested, and the contestation has to be worked out through deliberative politics. But this runs flat into the head of a lot of the way leftists think. While we agree with most of the problems Sandel sees, we often cannot deal with proposing ourselves a positive vision of a good life, or what an event would mean, or even defining our terms, what we mean by equity, what we mean by freedom, what we mean by solidarity. These are all contested terrain, and we fear to veer into the contestations. We have strategies and tactics, but for what exactly, we don't always know. Moral visions are always contestable, but a political vision is also always contestable, and one that has to emerge with a subject capable of enacting it. This requires a positive vision of what we want, not just what we are against. And that positive vision is sorely lacking because the left, like general society, is fractured like anything else. Its fracture is not going to be easily healed just by a few facile political victories or some policies that we can get to show up high on a pew poll yet never get the chance to implement. Our vision has to be bigger than that and less piecemeal. But how we create that and who does it is another question, and one that we have to ask ourselves. And this is where the communitarian's challenge to the leftists is important. Now, I know this reads like normie stuff. You're used to reading heady theory, and trust me, we're going to go to some. But I want you to think about the problem of generating virtues for the socialist. Virtues that emerge, that reflect and reinstitute the kinds of things we want. We shy away from this language because they are historically associated with things that many of us consider rightly reactionary, or at least of another time. And our visions and our virtues have to be worked out in the world as it is now for a world that we want. But to do that, we have to admit that we need them as operating principles, as guidelines, as a way to start to build the programs and tactics that we would need. We don't need vague slogans. We need orientations, ways of seeing. And sometimes we have to answer the Michael Sandels of the world. We live in a time where technology has degraded education in a real way, both in its commercialization and in its effects. I've done video, and I will do more videos on this in the future. And we live in a time where we can't imagine what positive corrective institutions would be. Sometimes we pretend we won't need them. That if we just solve the problems of poverty, these will go away, but as if socially complex feedback loops ever just went away by fixing one variable. This is not to say you should not be radical in your approach to this. You absolutely should, but you need guidelines and wants for what we need and what we expect and how we would hold people accountable. This is something we have to do as a community. I can't give it to you. Jails and schools are a way in which this current culture builds its civic market and contains its surplus population. Literally, in this case. And yet we even use the surplus population as a way to market and as a captive for more expansions of commodities. Where I differ from Sandel is I think our society would always have done this, that it is in the values of the society already. And those values are set by the prime value, the production of surplus value, and the power which it wields. And on that, I'll let you think. Like and subscribe. If you want more stuff like this, get into the Patreon, and have a great day.